So what can I do for you? Basically, you have questions about Islam. You're in between Islam and Christianity. You're saying you research Christianity, then you moved away from it. When you talk to Muslims, you realize there's issues with Christianity. So now you're saying you have questions about Islam, which is why you're not Muslim yet. You're saying you still have questions. You have things that you want to ask about, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that I'm familiar with a lot of what Islam teaches and what Islam doesn't teach and what Christianity teaches because I've been, you know, like I watch debates and stuff like that, and I know some people don't really like people watching debates, but like I've consumed so much of that even in my free time, so I know more than the average person just looking into Islam. Um,
Sure.
so I would say that me being in a limbo is what I mean by that is, um, there's still a chance in my mind that Christianity is true, and, yeah, like, that's why I'm in a limbo. It's not like I'm like, "Okay, Christianity is definitely false. I'm never going back to that," and I'm seeking into Islam. It's more like, I don't know which one is true in between the 2.
Hmm.
And I can give you,
Okay. Let's
yeah,
start with Christianity. What
yeah.
what evidences are there that Christianity is true? Since you said you watch many videos, can you give me one evidence that Christianity is true?
Um, I mean, it depends, like, what you would take as evidence. I guess one of the things that I would point to is how, the people that were around Jesus and the people that, like, the followers of like, the movement that was created after Jesus, um, like, died or went up to heaven or whatever, it was mostly like a Christian movement. And I know that Muslims would point to like the Ebionites, of people that didn't believe he was crucified, didn't believe like he was God or anything. But like, how do you explain the mass movement of Christianity after Jesus, in that
You
time in the
realize
first
the
century?
followers, yeah, the followers of Jesus were being persecuted generally, and they were weak in the Roman Empire. The spread only happened when Constantine adopted Christianity. So that answers your question. One of the biggest empires of the time, one of the two biggest empires adopted Christianity. And then
Okay,
the Christianity spread. It spread under Constantine, who had the councils like Nicaea and Constantinople and all of these other councils. And due
okay,
to the fact that he did that, Christianity spread. I mean, it's a very basic way to explain it. I mean, it's just history. But before that, they were very weak group of followers that were hiding mostly because they were afraid.
mm, okay. So you're saying that Christianity didn't really spread? Are you talking about like into the fourth century? Like that was when it really hit its like spreading point?
Yeah, if you want to look at like the big spread of Christianity, you talk about when the Roman Empire adopted Christianity. Not
Okay,
necessarily the councils, you know, the adoption of Christianity was not 400 years before, right? Constantine adopted Christianity. Councils started 325, 381. So many councils were there. But before the Roman Empire adopts Christianity, the Christians were not like that massive in number, anyways.
mm, okay, okay, cool.
Even
Um,
Paul was killing the or attacking or fighting the followers of Christianity or the apostles of Jesus, or whatever, before his changing into becoming a Christian himself. He's persecuting the followers. So it wasn't really that big of a faith. So you're asking me why is this big spread? You can see a historical development there with one of the biggest empires of the time adopting Christianity. You cannot see that with Islam though. Islam started with Prophet Muhammad in Mecca,
yeah,
13 years of persecution, and then Medina, 10 years, and then Muslims overcoming other nations, others like Roman and Persian Empire, which were fighting against them. You never had one of the two biggest empires like the Roman or Persian Empire adopting Islam and then Islam spreading. That didn't happen. Islam spread with people learning about it, with the followers spreading the faith. So you can say that about Islam. But again, where do you see, how is that evidence still? Where is the evidence that Christianity is the truth? How is that evidence for Christianity?
well, I mean, what comes to mind with that is like, even if the Christianity's big spread was when the Roman Empire or adopted Christianity, like,
Mhm.
what about still the majority of the people from the first century that like were around Jesus and the people who were the followers of those people and like the descendants of those people? Like they
Mhm.
believed in I guess an early form of Christianity, whether you think that's the same as
But
the
we
post
believe that's
Nicene
Islam.
Church.
But we
So you
believe that's
okay?
Islam. But the problem you'd have with that is that you cannot use that for the Christianity of today is true, because those people believe the opposite to what the people today believe in. In fact, if it
Right.
proves anything, it proves that the beliefs today are false, because the earliest followers then, they believed something different than what the followers later on, after the Roman Empire introduced Greek theology into Christianity. So if you want to look at it that way, then if you want to look at the earliest followers, they didn't believe what the Christians today believe.
Okay, what about people like Paul, who was writing in, I don't know, the 50s, 60s, 80? Like, because
Yeah,
obviously
Paul was against. I mean, that's the whole like kind of forms, and maybe you've seen arguments and discussions about that. But Paul was against the teachings of the apostles. He was against the teachings of Jesus. He had his own clashes with the apostles in the book of Acts, where he was teaching the Jews that they don't need to keep the law. And then he lied, and he said, he pretended as if he didn't when he was questioned, that we heard rumors about you that you teach people. This is in Acts
mm,
21, I believe, that we heard rumors about you that you're teaching that the Jewish people don't need to live under the law anymore. So go and sacrifice, show people that you're following the law. And then he went and did it. But you go to his letters, he's telling the people they don't need to follow in the law. We're now justified with faith. So he was a hypocrite, teaching different things. But it wasn't only Paul. There's many people writing gospels at that time. There's plenty of gospels that
yeah.
were written down. And they were all competitive to each other, and everyone giving you his view of what Jesus was and what Jesus did and whatever. I mean, it just so happened that Paul's message, because it was the easiest, was the one that was adopted more. Because Paul was telling people, you don't need to do anything. You got a free ticket to paradise. Imagine, look, I come
Mm.
to you, hey B, look, you gotta follow 613 laws. And then my friend comes and says, like, look, no, don't listen to this dude, man. Like, Jesus came to die and take all your sins away. All you need to do now is just believe in Jesus. You can eat what you want, drink what you want, do what you want, right? None of these things there's no more of these laws, makes life easy, right? Just believe in that. Jesus became a curse for us, and he took all of the sins away, and then just believe that. It's a very easy message to adopt and take, and then people can follow. But again, we're looking for evidence of Christianity. When we say Christianity, we're talking about evidence that Jesus was God, that there's such a thing as Trinity, and all of that.
Okay. I guess, what if you argue it from like a standpoint of like that the Bible and the Gospels are reliable, and they did reliably write what Jesus said, and that kind of like the obviously the lowest Christology, the Muslims, like that uh, that wasn't only what Jesus said, is just like, the coming of the kingdom of God and stuff like that. Like what you guys would take to be the Injil. But like the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, like what if you say that those are reliable?
We know that they're not reliable, so why would I say that?
Well, what if someone argued that okay, the Gospels are reliable, and we
How
have
would they argue that when we how would they argue that when we know the earliest written manuscripts of it is from the 4th century, and we know that all of the authors are anonymous? How would they argue that?
well, I know that I'm in college, and I just took a class where there's a kid in there who's, I think he's trying to become like a Catholic priest, and he's really smart.
Okay.
And he
Mhm.
explained it how um I mean, I guess this isn't like manuscripts, but this is talking about how like the oral tradition of the Gospels was preserved, and it basically was that there was the oral tradition before the Gospels were actually written down, and there were people that were guarding the oral tradition, and when people tried to add to it, um, like for example, like if you have like everyone knows the alphabet, and if someone tried to add in to the story or add into the alphabet, people are like,
Do you
no,
know what's
like
funny?
that's wrong.
I don't know who this guy is, but he's just telling you what happened in Islam and saying that happened in Christianity when it never did. I mean, I really find, I'm not gonna lie, I find that really funny, because I mean, the oral tradition is in Islam, that memorization of the Quran, and this
Yeah.
is the Islamic tradition. Christianity never had an oral tradition with the Gospels. Do you know why they never had an oral tradition with the Gospel? Because they were differing over the canons, anyways. I mean, until the time of Athanasius, where he canonized and said 27 books are going to be the canon of the New Testament or whatever, and then you had that book becoming the Bible. People weren't even in agreement on what these Gospels are. When Luke was writing, he wasn't writing in the church where everybody's following him. He's saying, in Luke 1, you can read it. He's saying that people were writing So I thought it was also a good idea for me to write. So
Yeah.
what oral tradition? He was just some random guy writing in somewhere. All of these authors were people writing random history. They were not like all accepted by the church, appointed by the church to write information. That didn't happen. So to come and say there was an oral tradition, that is like, I'm sorry, that's the biggest nonsense I've heard in my life. Plus, they wrote in different times, They wrote in different times in history.
Yeah, they did.
And it wasn't from the time of Jesus. There was no such thing as an oral tradition in Christianity. That's the biggest joke I've heard in my life. Sorry to say. If I ask him who is carrying the oral tradition, who appointed that oral tradition, which authority said, okay, those group of people, we're going to have those group of people are the carriers of the oral tradition. With Islam, I can tell you who are the writers of the Quran. I can tell you the memorizers, many of the names of the memorizers of the Quran, and then we have certificates. Every memorizer of the Quran today has a certificate that traces back to the Prophet,
right?
With the name of the people teaching it, the person after him, and all going back to the Prophet. There's no such thing as an oral tradition for Christianity. I mean, and I'm saying it's really funny that this person is saying there is, because I mean, even were to ask you, oral tradition of what? I mean, you go to the Protestant with 66 books. Or is it the Catholics oral tradition? Or is it the Orthodox 80? Which one? Who is teaching which oral tradition? They didn't even agree on the number of the scriptures. So these scriptures were,
I was going to say, like the major branches of Christianity, they all agree on Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and the New Testament. They disagree, with some Old Testament books, but the oral tradition is what I'm talking about. That's like the Gospels before, like from when Jesus lived, whenever Christians say he died, to when Mark was written down.
But they weren't written then. Yeah, they weren't written then.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like oral tradition.
So how can you have an oral tradition of the Gospels before the writing?
Because the people who were around Jesus, they saw it and they passed these stories down, and people passed it down and passed it down, and it was
which stories? Which stories? You realize I just told you that there was multiple people writing Gospels. And I told you that Luke told you what he was doing. Many people were writing. He thought it's also a good idea for him to write. How is that an oral tradition? Plus, who gives the authority to the people to conduct an oral tradition? Who did that? Who gathered the people and said, okay, you guys are going to become the bearer of the oral tradition? I mean, basically, this guy just told you a fairy tale story with no historical proof whatsoever.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I feel, and I mean, if there's anybody in the comments that could correct me, and you can correct me too, but I feel like that is the standard Christian position, because how else would those stories get from? What is the standard Christian position then? Because I mean, I don't know how else the stories would survive that long.
The standard academic Christian position, or the standard layman who doesn't know his head from his tails position?
Sure.
If you talk about the standard academic, if you talk about academic position, they all agree that these books are written by anonymous authors. The standard position is that there are people, they're copying from each other. You have this idea of Mark and Matthew. You have the copying happening between the two, which makes no sense, because you can see verbatim copying between both of them, which makes no sense given the historical narrative. Yeah, and then you have like, this is the academic position, that you had sources like M and Q and other sources which are not now lost, which are not found, that those authors were copying from. Okay, so you had main sources that they were copying from that are lost today that we do not have. This is the standard position that what we have today. The fact is that it's 400 years. The full manuscript is 400 years, the Codex Sinaiticus, and that all of the authors are anonymous. That is the academic position today.
Okay.
Like nobody really in academia who is worth a nickel would say anything opposite to that, because it's just a fact.
Yeah. Okay. So what would you say is your position then on like because I know there's people that say like we can kind of generally. What?
Sorry to stop you.
No, you're good.
So I've already established that we cannot say that the Gospels are reliable, but our main question was about what evidence Christianity is the truth. Even if I were to accept this idea, I say, okay, let me hypothetically accept the Gospels are reliable. That's not evidence that Christianity is true. If someone writing a history in a book, it doesn't mean it happened. You realize that. Even if I were to accept the Gospels, you have to prove the Gospels themselves have some sort of evidence that they're from God. If you just say, okay, they were writing history, the history could have been true or false. There are people writing history in a book, it doesn't mean Christianity is true. And then I'll add you another layer, which is that the Gospels or the Bible doesn't teach what Christians today believe. So basically it's layers of falsehood upon each other, It's like, so basically it's not reliable, but even if it was reliable, it doesn't prove that the information in it is true. And even if we accept it's reliable and the information in it is true, there's nothing in it that talks about the Trinity or Jesus being divine. So I mean, how many layers of conceding do I need to do to show you that there is no such thing as evidence for Christianity, basically?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess the only thing that I can think to say to that is if the gospels were proven reliable, and I think it would provide some evidence at least, because the rise of Christianity is what we would expect if Jesus actually said what we see in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, you would expect something like the church to rise. So
I don't get that. Sorry. Well, if Jesus said something, you'll expect the
yeah,
church to rise? I don't get that.
yeah. Okay. For example, Jesus in the Gospels, he predicts his death and resurrection, right? So if Jesus actually did say that, and in the
I
Gospels it
don't
says that
think that's
people,
true, actually. I don't think that's true. Are you
well,
For instance, you're saying I believe Jesus predicted Jesus said he wouldn't die in the Bible. That's what I believe he said. Jesus said to them, they asked him, give us a sign. The Pharisees, or they asked him, give us a sign. Okay. He said to them about adulterous generation or whatever. He insulted them. And then he said that the adulterous generation, you're not getting no sign except the sign of Jonah.
mhm,
Okay. So
yep,
what was the sign of Jonah? You know what the sign of Jonah was?
yeah, the three days, 3 nights in the belly of a whale, and
Yes.
that's
What
right,
was the sign? What's the miracle? What's the sign
that
that
he
Jonah
stayed
did?
alive.
So he survived in the belly of the whale. So if
Yeah,
Jesus said, I'm going to give you the same miracle of Jonah, I'm going to be in the belly. He was in the belly of the whale. I'm going to be in the belly of the earth 3 nights and 3 days. So if Jesus is given the sign of Jonah, can he be dead in the grave?
if if he was saying that the entirety of the sign is going to be
No,
replicated by me, then
the scripture is literally, adulterous generation, you shall get no sign except the sign of Jonah. Just as the same way he was in the belly of the whale for 3 days and 3 nights, so shall be the Son of Man in the belly of the earth for 3 days and 3 nights. This is literally what the scripture says.
right, yeah,
So now
yeah.
I'm asking, he said, you will get the sign of Jonah, and then he says, just as he was, I'm going to be. I mean, it cannot be more clear than this. So he's saying, I'm going to give you the same sign of Jonah, just as he was in the belly 3 days and 3 nights, I'm going to be 3 days and 3 nights. Now, my question is, what if the sign was that he was alive? Could it be possible for Jesus to be dead in the grave? And if Jesus is dead, let's accept this, that he's dead, which makes no sense with the scripture. It's contradicting what he's saying. But if we're saying the sign that he's dead, how is that a sign? Because he
I'm not
didn't say
sure.
the resurrection. He just said about the part about 3 days and 3 nights in the grave. That's it. How is that miracle for anything?
I mean, it wouldn't be a resurrection because he was never dead. But if I guess what comes to mind is
Yeah, no, I'm saying he didn't
how
say
would he?
anything about resurrection in that verse. All he said is that he's going to be in the grave for 3 days and 3 nights. I mean, every dead person is in the grave for 3 days and 3 nights. So obviously he's going to be doing something different if it's a sign, Every dead
So
person
what
is
does he
in
mean then?
the grave. That's what I'm
What does
saying.
what
He's
does he
not
mean
going
then?
to be he's going to be in the belly of the earth, but he's
And
going to
what does
survive
that
in the
mean
belly
then?
of the earth. That means he's going to be in the grave, but he's not going to die. I mean, surviving in the grave, being buried,
Okay,
right? But not
okay.
dying. Because if I put you in a grave for 3 days and 3 nights, you're probably going to die. So he's in the grave for 3 days and 3 nights, but he's not dying. He's not going to die. He's going to be alive.
But how did he get there then? He had to have been because he was at least.
You
If you say
realize I don't need to prove how he gets there, because all I need to do is to just take his words for what he's saying the sign is. I mean, that's irrelevant how he
how
gets
would he
there,
get in
right?
the grave then? How would he get in the grave then? If it wasn't for the
I
crucifixion,
mean, it's many
and I'm playing
hypothetical. I mean,
I'm
look,
playing devil's advocate right now.
yeah, no, I don't. You realize I don't accept the biblical narrative, but I'm saying if the
Right.
biblical narrative is true, I'm taking Jesus's words here. This is what he said. Now, someone can go and ask Jesus, how did you get in the grave in the first place? I mean, okay, let's say they crucified someone else other than him, and then he went inside the grave, whatever story it is, to hide so people don't find him after they crucified the other person. He went to hide in the grave for 3 days and 3 nights. I mean, you can give any random explanation. It's not upon me to give the explanation, anyways, because all I need to do is to just highlight that this is what Jesus said. So either he's lying or he's saying the truth. If he's not going to go to the grave, then he's lying. If he's lying, he cannot be God, and the whole historical narrative is gone out of the window. Or he's saying the truth, and then you have a problem because he's saying the truth. That therefore Jesus didn't die, according to his own words.
Yeah, I see your point.
It's an internal critique of the scripture. Yeah.
Right. And I know you don't have to accept the other points, but the whole biblical narrative. And I know that people will say, "Oh, it's not in Q, the passion narrative," but there is a passion narrative in the Gospels, at least. So Jesus, whether you take it to be historical or not, Jesus in the Gospels does predict that he's going to be crucified. That was the whole point of that he was going to die. So I would say
Does he
at
say I'm
best,
going to die? Does he say I'm going to die, or does he say I'm going to be crucified? What does he say? Do you remember?
well, maybe he says, "I'm going to be crucified."
Sure.
But then
Let's
I feel like
assume he
yeah,
says I'm going to die. Let's assume if he says I'm going to die, then what you've done there is number one, you presented a contradiction between this
right.
verse
That's
and
what
the
I was
other
going to
verse.
say. That's what I was going to say.
Number
Yeah.
two, yeah. Number two, if we ignore the fact that it's a contradiction, you see what I'm doing with you right now? I'm just pretending all the problems are not there. But I'm showing you, even if all the problems are not there, you still don't have anything. I'm just showing you, look, basically, if I give you the entire floor to Christians, they still have no proof. If I give them the floor and the windows and the buildings, they have no proof still. So if I say, okay, no problem, let's ignore that there's no contradiction, he's actually said he's going to die. How does that prove Christianity is the truth?
Are you granting the Gospels, like all the Gospels, or just granting that he said he's going to die?
No, let's say he said he's going to die and resurrect. Where can you prove that he actually resurrected and died? Where can you prove that? If he died, how can you prove he resurrected? Where is the proof that you can give me that this happened?
I mean, I guess the thing about history is that you can't really, especially something that happened that long ago, you can only
So
really
it's not
say
proof.
with I guess you can't say proof, but I guess you can say, like, the thing about history is it's
B.
about
What's
it's
the
about
difference? What's the difference between that B? And if I told you Prophet Muhammad والسلام, he was there was an army of Muslims and they needed water, and then the water started. They didn't have enough water, and then the water started gushing out of between the fingers of Prophet Muhammad. That's more historically reliable than the Gospels can ever be because we know who reported it. Okay, and we have the chain of narration of the people reporting it, and we have a mass transmission. So you have different people from different regions, from different places reporting the same incident. So we have this, which is more historical than any event in history. If I
okay.
told you that, then therefore this is Prophet Muhammad, you're not going to accept that. Now you bringing me something which is written by anonymous authors, no proof for it whatsoever, and you're telling me to accept it. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and I'm glad that
Yeah.
you actually pivoted to I don't know if that's Sirah or Hadith, but
It's a hadith.
if you
Yeah.
okay, cool. So that's one of the, if you're fine with moving on, that was like the main reason why I came on here today was
I'm fine
yeah
with moving on, but all I
yeah
just wanted to do is, because you said you're in between which one is true, Christianity or Islam, is to
yeah
demonstrate to you that Christianity has nothing, no ground. I mean, this question I didn't ask you alone, right? I ask every Christian. Nobody is ever able to give me anything of substance. I mean, when you ask Muslims, they give you proof. When you ask
mm,
Christians, they're just like, it's always the same thing. It's either they're going to talk about their personal experience, how they were a criminal, murderous, whatever, and Jesus came to them in their dream, which, I mean, doesn't prove anything. They all come with the same story, or they're going to tell you something which is not proof. That's it. You go to Jesus prophesies in the Old Testament. You go to the Old Testament, you don't find a single prophecy correct about Jesus. So that's the only, they're going to give you something like that. But other than that, they have nothing to prove, really.
okay yeah I see your point.
Now, yeah, you said you want to move on. I'm sorry, you want to say something that you're moving on now to Islam or something. I think you had something in
Yeah
mind. Go ahead.
yeah. So 101 fulfilled Islamic prophecies, and then it's Abraham fulfilled. So I've been reading those two books, and I just finished this one today. And I
Okay.
think what really stands out to me is, and I would say this is probably one of the biggest or the biggest reason why I don't believe in Islam is because in my mind, Muhammad's prophethood needs to be established, right? And I know that you guys would cite prophecies as, a big reason why, a big evidence and
Sure.
proof that he is a true messenger of God, right?
Yeah.
So after finishing this, I came to the conclusion that I will say this: there is some prophecies in there that are vague, but there also is prophecies in there that obviously nobody, unless they're receiving revelation from God, could know. And like, there's
Okay.
plenty of those in there. So
Sure.
I think what comes to my mind is there's two scenarios here.
Mhm.
Either he is a true prophet, or, and I don't know if this is this is a conspiracy theory. You've probably heard this before, but there's a
Mhm.
way that people attributed hadith after the fact to him, and like fabricated isnads, like the chain of narration. They
Sure.
fabricated
Sure.
it, and they kind of back
Sure.
projected it on Muhammad and said that he
Sure.
said these things when he
Sure.
didn't.
Sure. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's agree. If this is not the case, that the people have back projected the information about him, therefore it must be the fact that Prophet Muhammad is a messenger of God. Do you disagree with that?
Yeah, it has to be.
Okay, perfect. Then we will be on the same page then that Prophet Muhammad is a messenger of God. And I'll tell you the reasons are very simple. Now, first, with the hadith already, like I told you, we have an established oral tradition with the hadith anyways. We have chains of narrations, we have biographies of the people in the chains of narrations. We have all of that present that anyone can critique today. We have books of what we call ilm al-rijal, the science of men and the people in the chain and all of that. We have all of these books written. We have them written by very early on generations of Islam that talk about those individuals and talk about the chains and all of that. Now, not only that, we have these hadith and narrations, many of which we've seen the prophecies that are happening today, many of which happened hundreds of years after the prophet, right? So
Right.
now we have already carbonations of these ahadith from the 1st century, 2nd century, 3rd century, 4th century. So it's impossible, and it's multiple books now we're talking. Now, these ahadith were already there in the 2nd century, 3rd century, 4th century, 5th century, and the people were reading them and they haven't happened yet. So for them, these were prophecies, but they still haven't happened. For us, the prophecies that happen. But if someone was changing something, then he would have taken out all of these because they haven't happened yet. He would have removed all of these. So all of this 1,000 year of generation of people before the prophecy happened had all of these books already carbon dated and written. We have thousands, literally, of books quoting these ahadith. It's impossible, but it's impossible to say that these books were not there before, because we have books of jurisprudence, books of exegesis, books of hadith, books of all of Sirah, the biography of the Prophet. All of these books are quoting these ahadith. And now we're talking about books, we're talking about thousands upon thousands of books written throughout history. All of them are quoting these ahadith, and they haven't yet happened. And today they happen, yes. But we have all of these classical books that have the ahadith before the events happen. You know, Hammam ibn Munabbih, he was what we call a tabi'i. A tabi'i is someone who met a companion of the Prophet ﷺ and he didn't meet the Prophet, yeah? So Hammam ibn Munabbih was the direct student of Abu Huraira, which was the biggest narrator of hadith. The person who narrated most amount of hadith was Abu Huraira. His student was Hammam ibn Munabbih, and we have his sahifa. We have carbon dated his hadith that he wrote. We have it today, carbon dated.
Okay.
We have the Muwatta of Ibn Malik. Now we're talking about 1st, 2nd century. You have the Muwatta of Ibn Malik. We have Muslims of Imam Ahmad. We have many, basically. The list goes on and on. And they all have prophecies, which happen today, like I told you, and happen 500 years ago, 600 years ago, 700 years ago. So it's impossible to say that they wrote it after the event, because we can clearly historically establish that this wasn't the case.
Okay. Yeah, no, I know that there is like even in this book it said that there is some prophecies that like haven't yet came true, but obviously that
Yes.
doesn't disprove them, because it's not a contradiction, right?
Yes.
But like, for example, there is, I wish I like wrote down a hadith that I could have brought up here. But for example, like there's let me just
Like
think of an example.
for the river Euphrates, for example, there's a hadith that it will dry up, and then that gold will be found under it, and people will fight over it. Now we know right now that they're telling us that it's going to dry up by 2060 or something, or 20.
Right,
It's already started
right.
drying up. Yeah, But
Yeah.
this haven't happened yet because the full hadith haven't happened. But we can even say it's starting to happen right now.
Yeah. Wouldn't people say that
Just
that's
an
prophesied
example.
in the Bible too? That's just a question.
I haven't seen that. I'm not sure.
You
Could
haven't?
be,
Okay.
but I don't think the
Okay.
exact same prophecy is there. I mean, even if it mentions something, I don't think the exact same prophecy is there. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, I guess just I have so one of the prophecies in here, and this is just an example off the top of my head. So
Mm,
Muhammad, I think he was coming back to Mecca, I think, or he was coming back to Medina or somewhere. And he was with one of
sure.
his companions, and they were the person that narrated this hadith. For example, there was like a big
Uh-huh.
gust of wind, and then I think someone asked him like, "What does that mean?" or something, and then he said, like a hypocrite has died. Like that was what that big gust of wind was. And then when they
Sure.
got back, when they actually got to the town they were going to, let's just say it
Sure.
was Medina,
Sure.
they were told,
Sure.
"Oh, this hypocrite, like this so and so, they died." So it was like
Sure.
that just seems to me like that can be, and this
Yeah,
is stated as a
I never
prophecy in
used
here.
prophecy. I never used this as a prophecy in my life.
Okay, yeah, because I feel
Yeah,
like this
my
one,
criteria. Look, I have not recommended these books to anyone personally. My
yeah,
criteria is to give people the prophecies. I usually give them the prophecies myself.
and this one probably
Because
this probably
I
has
give.
the ones you're going to talk about.
Yeah,
But keep
yeah,
going.
but yeah, you can basically ignore these ones that you think are vague. But
Okay,
but then they can be supportive evidence when you look at the amount of ones that are clear.
true.
You understand what I'm saying? I'll give an
Yeah.
example. Like there's a prophecy about Prophet Muhammad والسلام, and in the Battle of Badr. It's a very, very
Okay.
strong prophecy, for instance. The Battle of Badr, which is the first battle of Islam. You see, Muslims were 300 against 1,000. Where Umar ibn Khattab, you know, second caliphate of Islam, where he said that the Prophet ﷺ told him exactly where the disbelievers are going to die. He walked with them before the battle, and the Prophet put his hand and he said, X, disbeliever X is going to die here. Disbeliever Z is going to die here. Disbeliever this is going to die here. Now, I want you to think about how the impossibility of this happening.
Yeah, of course it's impossible.
Yeah. So he's not only saying where the disbelievers are going to die, he's naming who is going to die where. Before a battle is about to start between 300 people and 1,000 people. I'm just giving you an example. Now we have prophecies in the Quran, for instance, about the Romans and Persians. I'm sure you probably have seen that prophecy, probably is in the book.
Yeah.
It's a prophecy that is time bound. There's a prophecy about Suraq ibn Malik, him wearing the bracelets of the Persian king. I'm not sure if you've seen that prophecy or not. Maybe it's in the book, maybe it's not in the book. I haven't read the book myself. But there was a bounty hunter that was trying to kill the Prophet ﷺ, and he was given the prophecy that he's going to wear the bracelets of the Persian king. He was a disbeliever at the time, coming to kill the Prophet, a bounty hunter. And he told him specifically is going to wear the bracelets of the strongest man on earth, basically, the leader of the Persian Empire.
Mm.
And the Prophet, this man became Muslim, fought with Muslims. He could have died in any battle. He could have died of disease. Muslims overcame the Persian Empire, which is another insanity, because the Prophet that time was leaving Mecca because they were plotting to kill him. He had no followers, nothing. When he said to that person, he had barely weak followers, you know? When he's saying to that person, you're going to wear the future, the bracelets of the Persian king. And then he survived until the time of Umar. You know, the Prophet died, the first caliphate died, the second caliphate. And then he was given the bracelets to wear with his own hand. You know, there's multiple prophets that we talk about today, like Prophet ﷺ talking about the diseases widespreading, sexual immorality widespreading, and then new sexual transmitting diseases coming, new diseases that didn't exist in the ancestors of the people will come to Advent.
Yeah.
The Prophet
Yeah.
talked about, you want to say something before I give other prophecies? Yes. What do you want to say?
Yeah. Yeah. So, what I was going to say to that one is, how do we know? Because I know that people will say, I watched a video on Fareed Responds' YouTube, and he was talking about the Romans have fallen, and something about the Persians being defeated, and was it
Yeah, you
the
haven't,
Romans were going to defeat
yeah,
the
yeah,
Persians?
yes,
Yeah, yeah.
that's
So,
chapter
so
30. Yeah,
yeah, so he was talking about how people
yeah,
were literally like, I think he said they were like placing bets or something. Like they were like Muhammad, if this doesn't come true, like
yes,
you're a
yes,
false prophet. So,
yes,
but that one I have no answer to. But
sure,
some, but the ones where you say like this disbeliever is going to die right here, or
sure,
the one about the bracelet or whatever. How do
sure.
we know that those weren't just written down after it happened, and then they just said, "Oh, Muhammad said this."
Yeah, because this is what I'm saying about the hadith being mass transmitted by multiple people. So the Prophet ﷺ fought in the Battle of Badr with multiple people. You have multiple people eyewitnessing that and narrating it. Now, those people fought with the Prophet and to lose their life in this battle, to survive, to later on for Islam to be what it is. If it's not true what the Prophet is actually saying, that they'll have no reason to say that. Have no reason to follow a liar. Have no reason to follow with my life and go into the battlefield and die and fight for a life. But that's why I'm telling you, if you want to even exclude or like ignore a specific prophecy like that, for whichever reason you want, but because I'm saying it's not rational, because those people actually fought with the Prophet, and then you have multiple people reporting it, and then we have multiple instances of people calling other people a liar because there were people lying about the hadith. There's a guy that wrote a whole book about benefits of reciting the Quran, and then he was exposed as a liar. Like, oh, this surah has this benefit. He just made them up. But in Islam, we don't accept nonsense. The Prophet didn't say it. We're not gonna come up and tell us like some, the reading this surah is gonna give you this reward. Where did you get? Just he literally made it up, for each surah. Oh, read this and you will get 100 houses in paradise. Like some nonsense, like he just wrote it with his own self. So in Islam, we have many instances of people being confronted, whether you say it in basically in a positive sense for Islam or a negative sense. We don't care. If you're lying, you're lying. We're going to reject what you said. So now but like I said, we have now plenty of prophecies that are happening hundreds of years after the Prophet and today. And I was giving you examples of these ones right now when I'm telling you, because nobody can make any argument when I'm giving you prophecies that was hundreds of years later. And we know for a fact that nobody can argue that this is the case that they're happening. Prophet talks about interest widespreading, for instance. And interest becoming a global thing. The Prophet said even believers, because we believe it's not allowed, even if we try to avoid it, we'll still be influenced by it. The dust will hit us. We'll be influenced by it. Today, it doesn't matter. There's a bank system everywhere. You cannot escape interest in some form. So, but why this prophecy is so great? Because it's impossible without another thing happening in history, which is paper currency. Do you know why?
Because there's no value within itself?
No, because you cannot have interest on a global scale until you lend people. This is how interest works. You lend people and you get more money back. How can you lend people globally when you don't have enough gold? There is a limited reserve of gold. You don't have an infinite, unlimited amount. But if you print paper, so no worries. Then we're on the same page. So if you print paper, you can do it whatever you want. So that's why. So the Prophet is prophesizing another thing here in this case. Prophet, for instance, says that time will come close, will come together. يتقارب الزمان, meaning that time will feel so quick, but at the same time, you have things like distance traveling. Right at that time, you'll spend a month to travel from one place to another. Now it's 2 hours. You can go from one country to another. No, and the Prophet talked about marketplaces coming together, globalization essentially. Marketplaces will come together. They will come close. They will come close and come together. Because when he says تتقارب there, it means two things. Coming together. So now all of the marketplaces are on this phone. I just go here and everything in the market I can purchase. But they're coming together, but they're also coming close because they're all on my phone. I can literally open my phone and get what I want. So I mean, like I'm saying, the Prophet ﷺ, for instance, talked about the deserts of Arabia. And he said you will see the deserts of Arabia coming back to being green. Meadows and rivers. Today, you go to nature, the greening of the deserts of Arabia, and they show you how there was 10,000 Asian lakes. And there was fossils of animals like whales and whatever that live basically in abundance of water. And they say 5,000 years ago, it was all water. How would the Prophet know that? And then it says it will come back. NASA has an article called The Greening of Saudi Arabia, and it shows you how it's turning green. If you just type on Google right now, the greening of Saudi Arabia, they will show you in 1987 or whatever until today. And like it's yellow to green. Now I can go on and on, right? And can give you things. It's impossible because look, all of these prophecies are in different fields. One prophecy about geology and the earth was happening. One prophecy about economy. One prophecy about armies fighting each other. Like you can be an expert in something and predict something, but you cannot know everything. You cannot know everything. You cannot get everything right at one point. It's impossible.
No, that's true.
Yeah, so if this is true, then you'd have no other option. Basically, you have no other rational explanation except to say that Prophet Muhammad is a messenger of God. But you know what's even more interesting? You know what's even more interesting? It's not that's not the only evidence for Islam. That's
Yeah.
not the only evidence for Islam. Like, even though that this is enough, but it's not the only evidence for Islam. Realize that the Quran also talks about, for instance, the biological life. You know, I think you're from the backstage. You're also talking a bit about
Yeah, I was
embryology, right?
listening.
Quran talks about
Yeah.
description. Yeah, the Quran talks about that description from biology. Quran talks about mountains and how they have deep roots within the earth, how they help the stabilization of the earth. So through a process we know today called isostasy. Quran talks about the clouds and how actually clouds are heavy. You know, someone in the desert looking at them thinking that these, you know, very, you know, mushy things in the air or whatever. I think they're very fluffy,
I know.
very light. The Quran says they're heavy because they weigh tons. So the Quran talks about the expansion of the Quran talks about, like, I can go on and on and on and give many of these examples on their own that are demonstrating on their own that another evidence for the truthfulness of Islam, where God describes the earth that He's created, basically.
Yeah.
Then you can have other evidences like the history. Quran talks about history that's not in the Bible, not in the previous civilizations, that we know is accurate, describing things the Egyptians did. For example, I'll give one example. There's many examples. I'll give one example. Pharaoh claiming to be God, for instance. You know, the Bible doesn't talk about that. The Bible, it doesn't even talk about that. And you know, until 1799, we didn't have the Rosetta Stone. And the Rosetta Stone, we discovered it. And it allowed us to read hieroglyphics, you know, because it had
Yeah,
hieroglyphics, Demotic and Greek. So we can translate from Greek to hieroglyphics, and then we can read what the Egyptians believe. And there you have a
Right.
temple in Egypt called the Temple of Abu Simbel. And they have this artifact about Ramses II, who's likely to be the pharaoh, according to historians at the time of Moses. And they have this artifact where you have two Egyptian gods crowning him to ascend to divinity, to become God himself.
Wow.
I mean, how like under what like rationality would you explain the Prophet knowing that? He couldn't read hieroglyphics. He didn't have access to that artifact so he can understand the artifact is saying and then reading it. And you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
like
What did
the
he say? What did he
evidences for
say about
Islam.
that? What did he say about
I'm
that?
saying
Sorry.
The Quran said Pharaoh claimed to be God. Then we have
Right.
that the Pharaoh
Yeah.
Ramses II on an artifact. Two Egyptian gods are crowning him to ascend to divinity.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Yep.
He's becoming a god. So the Quran records that he said to the people, "Ana rabbukum al-a'la," I'm your Lord, the Most High. I'm your God, the Most High. And the Quran also records him saying to them that, "Do you know any God worthy of worship except me?" So he's telling them, "I'm the God, your God worthy of worship." So he's claiming to be God. And then when he was drowning, the Quran records that now you repent after what you said, because that he claimed to be God. So it's a big major theme in the Quran, but it's not even in the Bible. Like, you go to the Bible, you don't even find the Bible talking about this incident that Pharaoh is claiming to be God.
Right.
So this is kind of, look, the evidences are many more. The inimitability challenge of the Quran, the teachings of the Islam itself, like the societal teachings of Islam, what it tells you to do from a financial aspect, what it tells you to do from a hygiene aspect, what it tells you to, all of these things from a dietary aspect, all of the things that Islam is teaching couldn't come from Prophet Muhammad, Desert of Arabia, 1,400 years ago. It's impossible. Now, if we add all of that together, I mean, what argument can anyone ever have to reject that Islam is the truth?
I mean, if to be honest, I don't know, because if something like that has been established as true, I mean, even if there's things in it that you don't like, I mean, you can't contend and be like, oh, these smaller things like Aisha or something like that. You know what I mean? Like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why, you made the brilliant point there. And that's why the Christians only clutch to straws. You said you watch multiple debates. Do you ever
Yeah, I
see them
have.
attacking the substance of the religion? Like we attack the substance of the religion, the substance of their creed? Or do you see them always clutching to small straws here and there? The Prophet did this, that, is this weird incident, this weird narration on this weird thing, that this weird man. Like, we're like, you see our arguments, we don't argue like that. We go to the foundation, we go to the crux. Trinity, divinity of Jesus, reliability of the scripture. We go to these things. Because once you crack the foundation, there's no need for me to talk about this very small verse here and there. You
Yeah.
understand?
Yeah, I understand.
Even though there's many ridiculous things, like, without being disrespectful, that are mentioned in the Bible that I can point out. You know, I can point out something about Isaiah, what God told him to eat something which is very inappropriate and to walk in a way which I can go on and on here and there. I can talk. I'm not going to say what it is because I don't make these weak arguments, you know? Basically, we can make these same weak arguments that they make, but we don't, because these are not the foundation of the faith. You go to the foundation of the faith. Now, compare what I told you, and again, which I told you like less than 10% of the evidences. Now, compare what I'm telling you to the question I asked you. Where's the evidence for Christianity? Is there really any question between the two? Is there really any difficult choice between Islam and Christianity when you look at it that way? Is it really hard to determine which one that you need to follow?
I mean,
Let's keep in mind. Let's keep in
yeah.
mind, Islam affirms Jesus was the prophet of God, and he came to deliver a message to the people. That there was Moses, there was Abraham. Islam doesn't completely reject these things as if they didn't exist or something. The Quran affirms that there was previous messengers sent with previous revelation.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, there is a lot of overlap reading the Quran. Like there is, you
Yeah.
know, for sure.
So I mean, I think you're rationally there. I think you should move on and take your step. You know, you watch tons of debates. You've looked for the evidence, and you see like the truth. You've accepted and admitted that there is no other alternative options. The only thing left for you now is to take that step and become a Muslim in practice. It's the only thing left for you to do.
Yeah, I mean, I think you definitely gave me stuff to think about because I mean, I don't want to be a party pooper, but like that's probably not something like one conversation. I think I need to reflect on it more, and look into the stuff that you talked about because
Sure.
I mean I've been doing this for a really long time, and one conversation hasn't convinced me, but I think you gave me a lot of stuff to think about though. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So I'll tell you something. I found it funny when you said party person. I mean,
because
because
I know
the
people.
thing
I
is,
know.
it's
Yeah.
not. I know what you mean. I know what you mean. I know what you mean. I just found it funny. But the thing is, my friend, this is the thing. I don't get anything from you becoming Muslim, nor does anyone in the chat. So you're getting it the wrong way if you think that basically people are going to lose something. We're going to lose something. People are going to lose something. It's for the benefit of you as a human being. If the people don't truly believe, or I don't truly believe that this is good for you, and I believe in my religion because the reward is only in the afterlife. There would be no point of me talking to you about it. Do you understand? Because I don't get like I mean, there's no one waiting to wire 1 million pounds to me once you become a Muslim. Wink, wink to the guys in the Gulf. Please send the millions. I just there's no there's nobody waiting for like, oh, this guy become Muslim, we're gonna send you a couple of $1 million. We don't have that. So in the end, it's for your own benefit if whether you move and take that step or not. But you say the thing is you say that it's one conversation, but it's not true because you're telling me you've been spending month researching and watching discussions and you had discussions with other Muslims as well, and you watching
Yeah.
videos of Muslims what you're doing. So if you are someone that I just met, because I do meet people a lot on the street, they haven't researched Islam, have no clue. Then I'll have a conversation, I invite them to Islam. Now I don't like tell them take your shahada because the person is just like the first time hearing about the message, it's the first time hearing about the religion. I'm
Yeah.
just give him the basics. It's like if I tell him just jump into this, it makes no sense. But for you, you've already done plenty of research. I mean, you're talking about reading the book with the prophecies already with the references. I mean, it's not like you're not someone who just had one conversation with me. So
Right.
the reason I mentioned that to you is that. But I don't push people to do something. It has to come from you. But I'm telling you, if you're asking me, I believe you're already there. I mean, because once you admit, okay, I agree that there's no way Prophet Muhammad cannot be not a messenger of God and at the same time do these things. Once you
Yeah.
reach that stage, then you're a Muslim. Yeah, go ahead. You want to say something? Go ahead.
Yeah. I would say, and I would say this. You are right to point out that I think there's either two options with the prophecies. I mean, like
Yes,
there's stuff in there that's so detailed, that's so specific that like
sure.
obviously he couldn't know, right? But
Yes, yes.
I'm not ready to concede yet that because like I don't know. I don't want to be in like an infinite like ping pong of like, okay, I got to look at this person's response to this and then this and this, but I feel like I do want to see how people try to explain away these hadiths and how people
Yes.
would be like, no, Muhammad, these are vague or whatever. Like I like to look into the counter arguments to see if like what you were saying,
Yes.
holds up. So I'm not ready to concede yes, Muhammad made
Sure.
actually
Sure.
true
Sure.
prophecies, but I
Sure.
am ready to say that these prophecies, like if he did say them, the ones in these book in this book, and then the ones that you brought up, like there's no way, there's no other options. He can't just guess. He's
Yeah,
gonna get one
but
wrong.
he did. Yeah, but he did say them because you have the references there. And even if you were to find the video of one person, and it is you are kind of doing it by saying you want to fall into that loop of going what this person is going to say, what that person is going to say. But what you're missing is if you go find one person who has one criticism to this one, and then you go to this person who has this vague whatever trying to explain away this one, it doesn't change the fact that it's impossible when you put them together. You understand? Like it's there is no way you can go to this person. Nobody lists all the processes of Islam and explains them away because they can't. That video doesn't exist. If that's what you're looking for, you're not gonna find that. Nobody has ever that, because if they do that, they're gonna do the opposite job of what they want to do. Because the listener is gonna be like, okay, like bro, you're stretching. Like you're giving me tens of prophecies and you're trying to explain them all. You're going for, nobody's gonna be able to do that because it's gonna look like the biggest stretch in history. You understand? So even if you were to find, oh, this guy has this criticism, that I haven't seen a single video of someone who goes like, here's the prophecy of Islam and why there's a problem with them. Even if you were to Google it right now, you're not going to find that because it's such a solid argument when you put them together that nobody's able to criticize it.
Okay. Are you
But
saying the
when you fairly put
like
them together and represent them the way they are, yeah, go ahead.
yeah, no, so you were saying the argument of coincidences can only happen so many times, and the fact that these that Muhammad did say these, that you're
Yeah,
just saying that it does prove him as a prophet and that no one can
yeah,
contend.
yeah.
Okay.
And no, I'm
Okay.
not only saying that. I'm also saying to you what I said to you before, that it's not just the prophecies as the evidence. You also, I added for you. I didn't even
Yeah,
mention
other
everything. I
stuff.
added for you only some of the other stuff that I mentioned.
Yeah.
So I'm saying there's no way to argue against this. Basically, I mean, someone can catch one of the like the prophecy you said. Oh, look, people, Muslims talk about prophecies, and there's prophecies for Islam. And like, for example, there was like a wind, and a hypocrite is going to die, and this is what Muslims have. You see, that's what people call a strawman. Yeah, someone can do this, and like clutch to a prophecy that I don't use and haven't even seen other Muslims use as evidence, and ignore
Yeah, it's just an
all of the
example.
list. Yeah, no, I'm saying someone can do that, right? Someone can make a video and
Okay.
do that
Yeah. Yeah.
and say, look, this is what you're going to find as a response. But you're never going to find someone listing the prophecies on a few things. You understand?
Okay.
So that doesn't
Yeah.
exist. It doesn't exist. But like I say, it's not only the prophecies. When you add everything else together, I can give you right now the references for what I said in the Quran. I mean, it took me a minute. Just ask me which verse, which hadith. Right now, I'll give it to you. I mean, it's not hard to do. I mean, I have no reason to be on a live stream and to lie to you and tell you things which are not in the Quran and hadith. It's just like make no sense. Because anyways, in my videos, I upload the videos and I put the references, anyways, for each thing I say. You see that on my
Yeah.
channel.
Yeah. hmm Is there any videos in like specific that you would recommend? Because I have a friend, shout out Ahmed,
Yeah, I
bro.
have
He
a
used
video.
the one.
I
Yeah,
have a
he
video
was
called
he was the one
Compelling
that told me to
Evidences.
talk to you.
Sure.
So
I have a video. Yeah, I have a
yeah.
video called Compelling Evidences for the Truthfulness of Islam. Compelling
Okay. Yeah.
evidences for the truthfulness of Islam. It's not long. I didn't go through all the prophecies or the evidences, but I gave you different categories and why these are evidences, basically, for why Islam is the truth. As an example, it's a very summarized video.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I just wrote that down.
Sure. All right. So I mean, like I said, I invite you to Islam, but at the same time, I don't push you to move on and take your step. If you feel like you want to do a bit more like investigation or whatever, do, but don't fall into this infinite never-ending loop because it's not going to take you anywhere, right?
Yeah, for sure.
It's not going to take you anywhere. And it should have been enough already if you're unable to present something that proves Christianity is the truth. Because right now we said, oh, I want to check what Christianity has to say. But even if Christianity has day and night things to say about Islam, what does Christianity has to offer for itself? I'm going to say that one more time because it's very important for Christians to pay attention to and open their ears. Even if Christians can talk day and night about Islam, what is it that they have to offer to show us that the religion is true? And that's why if you go to every Christian channel out there, day and night they're talking about Islam. Do you see them preaching their own faith? Do you see them, oh, look, here's our evidences for a list of arguments like the video I told you. Like, oh, here's an argument, a list of a video for arguments for why Christianity is the truth. You're not going to find this. You don't do this. Because they don't have anything. The only thing they have is the jealousy of why Islam is the truth. So let's try and criticize Islam day and night.
Yeah, I'd say that's a common theme on within Islam, is that people are always posting like, this is a proof, this is evidence, So
yeah,
sure.
Since I started doing live streams, my title has always been the same: question Islam or ask about Islam. I give you the floor to ask about my religion. I could make a title, Christianity is false, like some other people, be doing equivalent title, but with Islam. I can make these like Christianity, here's why Christianity is false. Atheists are irrational. Atheists are dumb. I can make these clickbait, rage bait things, and then attack other and then attack other things rather than represent my own. Why am I confident in representing my own? Because I don't need to attack something else to prove that I have the truth. You can come and ask about Islam and ask about Christianity, ask about what you want, and I will show you why Islam is the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Other than
I'll
that,
let you go and sit with this information, sleep on it, as they say, and welcome to come back. If you got something else that you want to ask about that perhaps I said, like that maybe you want to clarify something like that. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next person. And it's a pleasure talking to you.
All right, bro, you as well.
Pleasure talking to you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.